Sorry, GoToMeeting, can you hear us now?
This is Mark Velasquez. I can hear you.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I think I didn't turn the mics on for the Pledge of Allegiance. Roll call. Councilmember Bellinger?
Here.
Councilmember Kremick?
Here.
Councilmember Swift?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Legero?
Here.
And Mayor Alves.
Here.
All right.
Okay. Let's move on down. It says here, do you want me to read the council chambers are now open, all that?
You don't have to read
Good,
that.
let's not.
We can just go to the
Public-
consent item.
Beautiful, thank you.
Calendar.
I love that. All right, consent calendar. These items are considered routine in nature and are acted upon by a single action unless requested by an individual, council member, or member of the public for special consideration. I will accept a motion.
Mayor Alves, regarding item number 2, I will be abstaining from voting on check numbers 9765 and 74735.
Very good. I'll accept a motion for the balance.
Move to approve.
All right, all those in favor?
Mr. Mayor, this is Mark. This is City Attorney Mark Velasquez. Please just give a chance, make sure to remind or offer the choice to anybody, including the public, to pull an item off consent calendar if they're so desire.
Okay, thank you, Mark. All right, so
Sure.
we had a motion and we had a second, but before we move forward, is there anyone in,
Remind me who the motion was and who the second was.
okay, the motion was
And
by,
Kremick.
I'd like
Oh,
to,
thank you.
Second?
okay. And is there anyone in the audience or at, on the telecast that would like an item pulled or discussed?
yes. I have one.
Okay, which one would you like to discuss, and who's calling, please?
This is Kurt Dancer, 389 Noni, and just real quickly in the minutes, under my comments there, Mr. Mayor.
What the hell is that?
Uh-oh, he cut out. It was item 1 he was talking about.
Item 1, okay, let's look at
Yeah.
item 1.
And in the minutes, what was that?
He had something about his comment,
Yeah, I had a nice
in his comment here in a little. He commented last week on the, I think it was the
Yeah.
landscaping, wasn't it?
Yeah, I have it here. What was the comment on the minutes, please?
Just real quickly, the way it was written on the comment from Mayor Alves was only part of my comment. And when the city looks to cost out landscaping, I wasn't suggesting just for the landscape lighting district. I was talking the totality of the city properties, and because that makes a lot more sense. Also, there was some confusion because there wasn't really a discussion as to how many people you would need. I don't suggest that the city hire 2. In fact, if you were to hire 2, I would say they should both be part-time, deflecting some of the costs for full-time employees. It's just a thought. So I just wanted to clear that up a little bit. Thank you.
So for clarification, what did he say?
So basically, what we put as, in the minutes was that it was, the consensus of the council was to not hold up the item, but to do a study and see what the cost would be to have an employee handle the LLD within the first 3 years of the contract. So he was suggesting that we actually do a study for all of the city's landscape contracts.
No
So for-
longer use subcontractors?
Excuse me?
No longer use subcontractors?
Right, that was his suggestion. So, for clarification from the council on this, was it only to do these landscape districts, or was it to do all
Oh,
landscape
his suggestion is
contracts?
all of them.
His suggestion was all, but what was the consensus of the council
Was
on
the
that
one.
item? Was on the 2 districts that were being considered?
Okay.
Was that, so that's what we just need to clarify, because it's written as it would be just for the LLDs, that we were
Well, I
currently speaking of.
wasn't clear last week when we spoke on this that that's what his intentions were. So if his intentions are that, do we have to remove that motion, or how's that gonna work?
It wasn't really a motion, it was a
It's
direction to
recommendation.
council, or to staff.
Do we have to redirect you based on what he said?
Yeah, so just clarification of what direction you want the
All
staff
right,
to
staff
go.
members, council members, it's a misunderstanding we had last week, and it sounds like you want to do all of them. Is there any objections?
None for me.
Probably need to stand down on this one, so.
Okay.
This is just to amend the minutes to reflect.
Correct, to amend the minutes to reflect what the direction to staff is from council.
Sounds appropriate.
Okay,
Is that appropriate, Mark?
Yes.
Okay,
are we good?
so we're amending the minutes to reflect that we're going to evaluate all landscape contracts within the next 3 years of those basically, for the city to do them.
Okay, so is there a timetable on the evaluation, reevaluation?
Well, yeah, because the contracts that were adopted were a 3-year contract, so it was within those 3 years that we'll evaluate and cost out that.
So we have new contracts at 3 years, so we have a 3-year period window to look into it.
Correct.
Got it. Okay,
Yes.
I understand it
So
now.
we'll change it to, the minutes to reflect, see what the cost would be to have, employees handle all landscape contracts within the first 3 years of the contract.
All right then. Any other input, gentlemen? Okay, so let's go back to what we were doing before we did that, which is we have a motion and a second for the consent calendar. I think we can take our vote now.
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries 5-0. All right. Let's move on to the next item. Let's see here.
So we're
Staff
on-
communications,
yes.
looks like there's nothing there.
Yes, but staff has some to
Okay.
update you on.
Go right ahead.
I just wanted to update you in regards to a potential vaccine clinic for COVID here in the city.
Excellent.
I have been in contact with the county OES. I actually went to their clinic that they offered on Saturday for the veterans to get their vaccination, to observe what kind of staffing would be involved, because if we host a vaccine site, we have to supply staff for registration, for traffic control, for directing people in and out, and those kinds of things. It would probably take, for our size clinic, you're probably looking at about 20 to 30 people that you're gonna need.
Oh, that's right, you told me we had to staff them.
Yeah, so plus you have to take care of any water, food, those kinds of things for all of those workers would be on the onus of the city. Right now, there is not enough supply for the vaccines, and they haven't been able to offer any cities to host a site at this time. But if we were to move forward with hosting the site, if we can't get volunteers, then we're gonna, we don't have 20 to 30 staff that can man it. So we'd still have to work that out and see if we could get volunteers. But at this time, I don't have any kind of date available of when we might be able to do that.
What kind of volunteers would they be looking for? What are their parameters? Can they include service organizations, church groups?
Oh, yeah, because when you're talking, like, when I was at the site on Saturday, there were people that were directing the traffic in, they were handling, so first you have a check-in where they are checking in to make sure they register and have an appointment, they are who they are, their age, and where they live. Then the next step is you put them in line and they have to fill out a consent form. So you have to keep those consent forms in a certain order, you have to hand them out, you have to get them back. That's how they trace how many vaccines are being given. Then from that area, then they go to a station where they're given the vaccine. And the way they did it was outside, they would pull up. So there were attendants that were helping them park there. And then they get their vaccine, you wait 15 minutes, and then they back them out to get them out of there. So then they had also the sheriff's department with traffic control out on the main roads. Mm-hmm. So, you can have volunteers to that aspect. What is not clear to me is the health facility personnel if they can help us get those people to do the vaccination and those kinds of things. That part of it is not clear to me still at this time, so, but I'm thinking that we only have to supply the volunteers for all the logistics and not for the administration of the vaccine.
That makes sense. I mean, we're not supposed to have nurses laying around.
Right. Yes. You also have to provide some kind of refrigeration for the vaccine while it's on site, and the vaccine has to be locked up and secured, and it can only have certain personnel that can get access to the vaccine. So like at the site where they were at, they actually pulled in refrigerated, I don't know if it was a trailer or what it was, but it was locked, and there was only 2 people that could go in to obtain vaccines, and so it was very tightly monitored.
Do we get an option to type which one of the 3 that are available?
At this point, no.
Because the
So-
Johnson Johnson's 66% supposedly, and the other 2 are like 90%.
Yeah, I haven't heard that Johnson & Johnson has been approved by FDA
not
at this
yet.
time.
Okay.
Yeah. It's there, it's right there, but they haven't got that approval yet.
This wouldn't be limited to Escalon residents. It would be just a site where anybody from anywhere could come and get the
So-
vaccination.
So they did tell me that we could do some, what we could do would be offer it up to our zip code and maybe the surrounding zip codes. And then if it didn't fill up the appointments within a certain time period, then it would open to anybody in San Joaquin County. But he did tell me that they would send out notifications first to our zip code and surrounding zip codes. And then from there, based on what the appointment schedule looks like, if there's a lot of openings, then they could open it wider.
That sounds better.
So we're still probably a little bit premature before we ask the community for help.
Yes,
or anything like
yeah,
that, but-
because, I'm thinking it'll be at least 2 to 3 weeks before
Yeah.
we'll ever be able to.
Running that, is that like a county?
Yeah, it's in conjunction with the county, public health and the OES.
All right?
So, and there's a company called HR Support that they've been doing the testing sites, and they've been doing some, vaccination sites also. So I know they did one clinic at the Ag Center 2 weeks ago, and they're getting ready to do for the second shots in the next 2 weeks or, yeah, something, yeah, it's 20 days, 21 days for in between shots.
That's a good question. Are they, if, let's say we have a clinic, let's say March 1st,
Mm-hmm.
you know, can we safely assume that we're gonna be having a clinic, what was it, 3 weeks later? I mean,
Correct,
you know,
yeah.
Just to make sure that they're getting both doses, right?
So we haven't had those discussions, but I would assume that would be part of it, because they're still trying to work out the whole, individual sites hosting the vaccines.
That's
Because they have to take into consideration when they're holding the vaccine clinics about how many vaccines are available,
Yeah.
so they can make sure those that got it still can get their second vaccine also.
It's been a bugaboo, I guess.
Yeah, yes. And, you know, what the county's been told they're gonna receive in vaccines is not what they're receiving. So there's been some, you know, conflict there. All right, so I have a couple more items. The wastewater treatment plant improvements, I had a call this evening with, we were looking at using USDA for a funding mechanism. And the way that our project is currently aligned is it's called a design build. So the NG is designing it and would build it. You don't go out to bid. USDA will not fund or give a loan on a design build project when it's related to wastewater or to water. So, I haven't even talked with NG on this yet, again, because it was late this evening that I had the phone call with the USDA rep. So I'll have to be having some conversations with NG on how we want to proceed with this, or what our options are at this time. So just to let you guys know that. The other thing is, a few months ago, council had directed staff to start exploring the connection to the, South San Joaquin surface water treatment plant. So I have been in some conversations with Pace, and they actually have just recently did, one of the, they call them turnouts for Lathrop with the connection to the surface water treatment plant. So they're gonna work with me. We're gonna try and put some numbers together and see, and some direction to see where we're gonna go with that, what it's, what the cost is looking like and stuff. So just to let you know that we're working on that.
How does Pace figure into this?
Well, right now, they're just talking and helping me through the initial
We
planning
have
of
no
it.
commitment to them at this point, we're just going,
No,
this is
well, I'll have
preliminary.
I'll have a small commitment to of them of 10 to 15,000. He's gonna get me that for their efforts in design, a percentage of the design.
What is it they're gonna design for us?
Well, it'll be mapping out the connection and where it needs to go and getting us that engineer's estimate, on what those improvements are gonna be. Working with SSJID on the,
Didn't we have some of that already done?
we have those numbers. Those numbers have been questioned quite often, and at last it was directed that we should start down this path. So we've never had any kind of official, engineering document. It's all been based on what the original proposed alignment was.
We have documents supporting that,
Yes, yeah,
but we have not contracted anything.
no.
Before we do a review, we'll review all that, correct?
Review which part?
Those documents, if in fact we move forward.
Oh, yes, yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So at this point, it's preliminary, we're paying them $10,000 to do the footwork?
right,
Okay.
yeah. And then just an update on the NG project, they're gonna start lighting portions of it. The library is done with all of their HVAC. The police department received upgrades and refinement to their HVAC. So now they'll be going through buildings and outsides and parking lots and, upgrading all the light fixtures or the
Great.
lights.
Good news.
That should be started in middle of February and scheduled to be completed middle of March, and then they'll move on to baseball fields, the
Okay.
lighting in the baseball fields.
Good.
And that is all I have. I know Dominique has a couple of items, and Justin has something he wanted to
Okay.
speak on too.
Okay, so at the last meeting, you may recall that I had put a letter into each of the council members' boxes from Jilton Solid Waste, who is our recycling and trash, yes,
1383.
collector, for SB 1383 implementation. It's a, state assembly bill per the state of California. I just wanted to put a reminder that that letter obviously goes through what the requirements are gonna be and when they need to be implemented. And they did discuss a workshop that they are wanting to hold with us to discuss the implementation plan. And it's scheduled for February 12th from 10 to noon. As the date gets closer, obviously, they're gonna send us the information to attend that workshop. And so when I receive that information, we'll forward that out to you. But I just wanted to give you a heads up, because this will ultimately move into opening up our contract with Jilton and updating it for these items, which also provides opportunity to update other items, with these ones being priority for now, because these have to be done. So I just wanted to remind council of that, and as that date gets closer, we'll send you that information. Regarding the Big Boy property, the new property owner did contact me on Friday, and they are anticipating submitting their plans to move forward with updating that property into an Orlando's Market, as well as a gas station, a fueling station, in the next 30 to 45 days. So we're excited and waiting for those plans to come in, giving you an update there. I did reach out to Heritage House regarding a contact. I was given a contact who responded to my email and gave me their contact information. However, I have not heard back on a date to schedule a conference call to kind of go over what the council's goals and priorities are in regards to affordable senior housing. So that's where we're at for right now. I will continue to follow up. And then I did speak about 18 months to 2 years ago, possibly. Might have only been a year ago. It feels like a long time. We met with Danny Fred, who's with DFA Development, and they were interested in moving forward with an affordable senior housing project. The property they were looking at was the auction yard property, or is the auction yard property. They did reach out last week and did advise that they are still interested in moving forward on that project. As you're aware, it would be affordable, deed restricted senior housing, ages 62 and up. And affordable obviously is from the state standard, so there's a maximum income limit that would qualify. So they have, at this point, basically let me know that they're still looking forward to it, and they have given me some forms to fill out to where they could obtain information from the city to be able to use it if they were to move forward with applying for tax credits. Those tax credit applications are open twice a year. The first one, I believe, ends the end of March, and then I think they have a secondary application that you could do, I want to say October-ish. So I'm going to follow through with filling out that information. There's no risk, and we're not entering anything with them. It's just giving them that information to be able to utilize it to move forward if they can. And that is all I have.
So this is the update I was requesting every 2 weeks?
Correct.
Perfect, I love it, thank you. That's really helpful, actually. As the 1383 item, I reviewed it, looked at it, and we're having that workshop, and I've got a lot of questions.
And that's great. If you want to make a list and put them together, send them to me.
I reviewed it, and the whole premise of the thing was they're trying to avoid methane gas in these landfills. Have you noticed the one there out of the Orchard place, or what's that called, that place over near the side, into Yosemite out of Modesto? There's that cross-section there, or crossroads there. There's what's that place where they have the concerts now? And
The fruit yard?
Yeah.
there.
You turn right on that road, that's Gear Road.
Correct.
Yeah, Gear Albers.
And to the right, and down a ways, you'll see a landfill with methane pipes sticking out of it. So my question is, why aren't they doing that in more of the landfills and capturing that gas and running generators and producing electricity? So that's just one of the things I had questions about.
I mean, that's great information, and I definitely encourage, if you have any questions, even if you think that they're, silly or just.
It's more and more
yeah.
cost to the taxpayer.
Yeah.
This thing is crazy. I looked at it, it's insane. Okay.
We were very surprised with all of it, but not surprised that it got.
Do we know who the author was on the 1383?
I don't recall off the top
Could you
of my
find out,
head.
please?
Sure.
I would like to contact them, see what they were thinking. Of course, I already know, but I want to hear from them.
Sure.
I got a question about that. So basically what it comes down to for the citizens and people who live in town is if this thing goes through and we have to implement that and we have to revisit the contract, it's gonna increase the cost.
Oh, yeah.
It's
of
gonna
getting our
increase.
garbage taken out essentially, right?
From the last time I had spoken to somebody from Jilton, they had advised that when it comes to increases, the last one they had at the 1%, that's the last time they'll ever have a increase that small. Like the next one will be significant to cover the cost for this type of service.
And this is
Did they
this
tell
is
you,
statewide. This
This
is
is
not just
statewide, yeah.
Yeah, it's not just Jilton. It is statewide.
And Jilton is I wouldn't say the main provider, but they have many of the cities in San Joaquin County and Stanislaus County, so they're one of the main providers. There are other ones, but they're probably the heavier load company out of all the ones in this area right now.
All right, well, we'll visit that, we'll have the workshop, we'll see what we can come up with, because it's pretty encumbering. All right,
Justin, you can go ahead. Are you there, Justin? I see you're unmuted, but we can't hear you.
he can come in later if he wants.
Well, I can tell you, one of the things that he wanted to say was just a big kudos to his department, how they handled the recent storms last week. And I know that they tried to help out our residents as much as they could with the cleanup, and they did a lot of extra effort and a lot of,
Good feedback on it, yeah.
yeah, there was a lot of man hours that went into that. Okay,
All right, let's move on to matters presented from the audience. The public may address the council on any item that is on the agenda at the time the item is called. The public may also address the city on any item not on the agenda that is within the authority of the city council. Each speaker is limited to a maximum of 5 minutes. Unused time may not be yielded to another speaker. The determination of whether an item is within the authority of the city council is discretionary decision made by the mayor. All right, having said that, is there anyone out there who would like to come and speak on something that is not on the agenda or on the agenda? This is your opportunity to do it. You have 5 minutes. Is there anyone on the phones that would like to speak?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
And this must be Kurt again. Yes?
Yes, Kurt Danziger once again. 2 quick items. Just the first one's FYI. I've got a scheduled vaccine appointment tomorrow at Safeway in Manteca.
Yeah, I heard that.
And I was able to set that up by calling the health department and going to the website sjready.org. And on that site, you can find out where there are vaccine locations available, and you can set up an appointment online. I just went back and checked again. I don't see it there, so the rumor is it probably ran out of vaccines. But there's a resource for you. Number 2, I like that what I just heard from Dominique about the affordable senior housing. And one of the questions I always have is our in lieu fund. Are we able to use any of that money to help out the contractor in building these things? Whether it's for matching, I don't know how it works. So maybe Dominique can address that. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Kurt. Dominique?
So in regards to the monies we have in the in lieu funds, that's at council's discretion, whether or not that money could be used for senior housing and or affordable housing. If they were interested in using the funds in that,
Capacity.
I think we call it a trust fund or a, something bank, you would be able to put those towards the project.
We would need more information whether or not, in order to make that decision.
Yeah.
It would have to depend on the project, and the council would have to weigh it, and then we'd have to make a decision.
Correct, and because it's a project that is deed restricted affordable, and they're applying to the state for the tax credits, and utilizing the housing authority to help fill those units, it might not be that that's needed because they'll be receiving funding from the state
gonna
and
get
possibly federal, so it just depends.
Credit for government, that'll offset that.
It just depends how many. It's a big, from what I'm being told, it's a big competition. A lot of developers apply for that stuff, the credits to build the projects, and so it's very competitive.
I've heard and can't confirm that in Manteca, their project had an overrun, which cost quite a bit of money, so I wanna look into that too.
Okay.
How much is in the in lieu account?
I'm not sure at this time.
If I can Get that back.
Yeah,
to us.
I'm sorry, I don't know. I wanna say it's around 800,000.
You can get back to us next meeting on
That's
that.
money you could use to help a contractor, developer build senior housing essentially?
So it's money that we've collected, in lieu of a contract or a developer building affordable housing. We did borrow some of those monies, towards city hall, improvements. So, there is a portion of them that are borrowed at this time.
Thank you.
Okay, can we move on now? Anybody else have any other questions? Any more comments? If not, we're gonna move on. We're gonna move on to item number 4.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, this is Mark Velasquez. Did you check to see if there was any other public comments?
I think I just did that.
Yeah, you probably
Oh.
need to talk in the mic a little bit
Okay.
more. They may not be able to hear you.
Sorry about that.
No problem, Mark. Thanks for the checkup. That's all right. That's what we got you for. All right. Having said that, and I'll repeat again, if there's any other comments, now's the time for either online or here at the council. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to administrative matters number 4, consider a request of reduction of development fees on a development project known as Escalon Vintage Living.
You, Mayor.
Whoever that is, could you mute your mic, please?
So at the last meeting, we had a presentation, a developer presentation from Escalon Vintage Living. It's a proposed development project consisting of 18 single-family residential, single-story units with 1 or 2 car garages, ranging from 1,067 to 1,295 square feet. Two different sizes, so I shouldn't say ranging, it's either 1,067 or 1,295. The current lot sizes are proposed at 2,700 and 3,400 square feet. Each parcel would be deed restricted for ages 65 and up and have the covenants, codes, and restrictions, or CC&Rs, filed on the property, and will have maintenance agreements recorded on each of the parcels to address the costs of the ongoing needs of private street, common areas, which include open space, parking, lighting, and landscaping. The developer had provided that presentation at the joint workshop of the Planning Commission and City Council, which was at the last meeting on the 19th. The developer presentation was requested by the developer to obtain comments and feedback, as well as an idea of whether the city is supportive of a project like this being constructed in the city of Escalon. Pursuant to Escalon Municipal Code 17.24060C, all new residential projects over 1 acre, except in the downtown area, shall be required to have a planned development, overlay, or combining zoning district. This means that this project will be reviewed by both Planning Commission and City Council for its approval. The developer is requesting reduction of fees by requesting that the project be charged the city's development impact fees for either multifamily or duplex per duplex housing instead of single-family residential housing rate. So listed are the 3 fees: transportation, police, and city hall, where the single-family rate is listed, and then the multifamily rate is next to it, and that is what they were requesting for that fee per unit. And then you also have Public Works, Administration, Library. The Regional Transportation Impact Fee, which is the one with the star next to it, is the county's transportation fee. The city does collect this fee on behalf of the county, and then we forward it to the county every quarter. We can't approve the reduction of this fee, but in past projects, when we have given them the multifamily residential designation, they honor that as well to keep consistency of the project as a whole. So if we were to move forward with updating the fees to the multifamily fee, they would do it as well, most likely. The developer believes the proposed fees use a common sense approach, stating that at more than 9 units per acre, the project meets a higher density. The property where this project is proposed is 2 acres in size. The city's density requirements for this property would place the project in the medium density or R2 category. Per the city's most recent development impact fee justification study, which was completed by David Tossage and Associates back in 2016, single-family and multifamily land use classifications are defined as below. So according to that, our single-family, which includes single-family attached and detached homes, and then our multifamily includes buildings with attached residential units, including apartments, townhomes, condominiums, and all other residential units not classified as single-family. The developer is also requesting a reduction to the Parks and Recreation, water connection, and sewer connection fees as followed. So those 3 fees are listed. We have the single-family residential rate next to them, and then either the multifamily or duplex. The first 2 are requesting the multifamily fee, and the third one, which is the water connection, is actually the duplex per duplex fee. And then off on the side, it advises that it's essentially half of the single-family rate. The developer advises that the fee reductions proposed for these categories of the city's development impact fees are related to the number of people within a household, using a 1.75 as the persons per unit calculation. They believe this number is accurate for senior housing, which is 50% of a single-family residential household number of approximately 3.5 persons per unit. The city's development impact fee justification study advises that per California Government Code, there is an exemption or exemptions for affordable housing and senior housing is at the discretion of local jurisdictions. So such fee exemptions are a policy matter that should be based on the consideration of the greater public good provided by the use exempted from the fee. The city's current fee schedule and fee study places this project in the single-family housing category for land use and rates because they are individual units, each with a separate meter. The development itself is single-family residential, while the water connection fees are not based on the size of the home, number of persons, and age of persons in the household. Council does have that discretion on reducing the fees, since it will be deed-restricted senior housing, and it will be deed-restricted basically forever unless the council changes it otherwise. In addition, the developer requests that the proposed project be exempt from the inclusionary housing ordinance to sustain the affordability of the project for seniors. The city's current ordinance on affordable housing, which is section 17.50, requires that all projects subject to the ordinance construct 10 to 15% of all new sale, or of all new for sale units to be either very low, lower, and moderate income households at an affordable housing cost or affordable rent. The proposed project's requirement for affordable units is 2 to 3 units, 2 at the 10%, 3 at the 15%. Past projects, we've typically done the 10% at moderate. The ordinance further explains that if the city council determines that constructing the required units is infeasible, the council may permit the developer to either pay the affordable housing in lieu fee or dedicate land. The ordinance does not provide any other alternatives or any exemptions to specific types of housing. The current affordable housing in lieu fee for the proposed project is estimated between $850,000 to $950,000, and that's because it's calculated off current market for sale as well as sold, and so it really depends on what the market is like for this calculation. And the developer needs the full 2 acres of the property to construct the project as planned. If the council wants to exempt this project from the ordinance because it is a deed-restricted senior housing project, they will need to amend the ordinance to provide an exemption for this type of housing, which would then apply to all deed-restricted senior housing projects in the future. So if you have any other questions regarding this item, please let me know. We do have John Williams from Paramount Homes, as well as Rick Lummert with Benchmark Engineering, available to answer any questions and kind of give an introduction to their company as well and the projects that they've done in the past.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. My name is John Williams. I'm with Paramount Homes. We're proposing a senior project of 18 units in your community. We're hoping that with our proposal, what was it, 2 weeks ago? I think it was, 2 weeks ago when we talked about it, I was hoping that I'd get some more comments on it because we're obviously only wanting to do this project if the community is behind us and wants to do it with us. We are asking tonight for you to take fees or to give us a guidance on our fees so that we know whether or not this project is even feasible. We at this time have done a complete analysis and to make this project affordable for seniors. And when we say affordable, what we're talking about is something different than the affordable housing that Dominic was talking about. We're talking about a house that's market affordable, meaning that we're going to still pay a lot of fees. For example, this property, approximately 2 acres, I think you could put 6 or 7 houses on it. And if you looked at your total fees that you would collect from that 6 or 7 houses, you would find that this project with the 18 houses will generate a lot more fees to the city and the community than the 6 homes. But obviously, what we're asking for is that some of those fees be reduced on a per unit basis. The one issue that I see in reading this ordinance, that we decided to go detached. And the reason is we believe that is, we're in Escalon, we believe people would like to be detached. Now, can the units be attached? Absolutely. They're duplex looking then, they're a little, or townhouse looking. It's a different kind of feeling than having detached on each side. We think it's great to have these where each one is like just a small home, an upper scale home. If you're familiar with our building, we're high-end builders. We build, we build anything from semi-custom up to custom. We're kind of a boutique builder, and we've been doing this for 30-some years. So the way that we at least envision this project is to have units that are smaller for the move-down buyer, but still have all of the amenities. You know, still have the gourmet kitchen type things, has the nice granite, the nice tile or hardwood on the floors, very upscale, walk-in showers, everything is handicap style, door sizes of 3.6 and room for turnaround for wheelchairs. We're trying to build something that would give people an active 55 and adult, and Dominic said 65, but it's 55 and 55 and older, active adult community will be deed restricted. These communities typically, the way it's designed, is we have a 1-bedroom with a den that can work as an overflow bedroom. Normally that's going to be a 1-person, maybe 2 in it, and then the other one would be a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, and that would more likely be 2 people, but still also could be still 1. So when you look at the analysis on it, we used 1.75 people per unit. So if you take a normal single-family resident unit at 3.5, and then you take what we're thinking should be a 1.75 occupancy factor, it's 50%. So that's how the fees, and that's why the fees for the sewer and water, because obviously the amount of water that's used, you know, if you're using 300 gallons a day in a single-family house, and I'm just making these numbers up, you're using 150 gallons a day. These are much smaller yards, or much smaller houses, less people. So we did the analysis, we looked at it, we thought, wow, this would be a very nice project. I think everybody has seen kind of the overview of what the units were going to, you know, projected to look like, which are, it's to look like a residential subdivision that would just be on smaller lots, but still have, you know, 5 feet on each side on one, so you're gonna have 10 feet on one side and 6 feet on the other between the houses. So instead of attaching up the garages or whatever like a duplex, this gives you, I think, a nicer look. We're also projecting paver-style streets and upscale amenities. But ultimately, the affordability comes into play, even or always with seniors, but because they're on limited incomes. But ultimately, with this market, with the increased costs that and all of the things that we're absorbing, we're finding that more and more doing projects where you build a house under $500,000 or $600,000 is almost becoming impossible. Especially when you look at the cost of land and fees and improvements and everything, it's becoming impossible. We're projecting these units to be 335, 340, right in there, to just under 400. So we're saying that 330 to say 390. We're wanting to keep them under 400,000. We're wanting them to have a brand new upper scale home in that level. To do that, though, we have a couple of things. And I'll let Rick speak a little more about the numbers and how they are, but we need basically the fees to be reduced to a multifamily fee, which I believe we're at 9 units per acre. I think we are a multifamily density, but we're detached because we think that looks better and people will like that better. Could we attach them? Absolutely. We could attach the garages up. It's not going to look as good. It's not going to be as nice, but we could attach them if that's the criteria that we need to get to a multifamily fee. So, number one, we're looking for multifamily fees in all of your fees, with the exception of 3. Parks and recreation, sewer connection, and water connection. Those fees, we're using the 50% approach from a single family based on the fact that we've got a 1.75 occupancy factor compared to a 3.5. Then finally, we're also requesting, you have in lieu housing, or not in lieu, but an affordable housing, inclusive housing element in your plan, which many cities do, and so on. Unfortunately, for seniors that have spent all their life and everything in paying their taxes, and they're getting to the end and they're wanting to, you know, maintain their unlimited incomes, it's very difficult to say, hey, you need to spend, let's just figure it out, take $900,000, let's say that's the affordable housing fee, and divide it by 18. I mean, do you want to pay that? I mean, you're paying that for somebody else to get a house. I mean, I think they've been paying taxes, they've been there to raise the price $50,000, you know, for them so that they can buy one of these. We don't think it's feasible. We looked at it. We think it takes the units and it puts them up to between 4 and 450 versus between, you know, 3 and 4. So we think it raises the price $50,000, $60,000 a unit, and we think it ends the feasibility of the project. So with that said, I'm going to let Rick say a few things. These fee requests, you know, are really being asked humbly from the standpoint of making the project work. They're not in any other way being requested, so. With that, would you? Oh, I did. So there's been some requests that, or some conversations that I've had where, and we're all for this. How do we keep these houses in the community? How do we get these houses into your community? So we cannot restrict who our buyers are. Just, we can't do it. But what we can do is when we start this project, we can, at the time we start construction, once it's approved, we can release it to Escalon community people only. And we'll have to be clear about what that means. But there'd be people within your community, and I'd be glad to work with your staff to come up with what that means. And we would give them maybe a 90-day preview. And what that would mean is that the people that would want to buy that could easily come, get a reservation, $500 deposit, reservation, hold a lot, figure out if they want it or not. But it puts them in a front position, and it means that there's no market. No one's going to be able to buy those for that 90 days. At the end of that 90 days, we'll be coming back to them, the salespeople would be, and they'd be saying, hey, can you, are you interested in continuing to move forward? And by that time, maybe there's some units they can look at, because a lot of times they're doing this early on, and they're going to want to look at the units, and obviously so. So at some point, they'd get to see the units, they'd make a decision. They'd either A, say, yes, we want to move forward, and they'd create a contract and move forward, or we'd refund their reservation fee, and then we'd go to the next person in line. And we just hold people. And we see doing, like, of this 18, we see doing 9 and then doing 9. So we'd probably release 9. We'd then start building that. We'd have that release. And then once those are sold, we would then release the next 9. The next 9, we probably wouldn't be able to have the full 90-day type of a preview, but we could still do a 30 or 45-day kind of a preview, even on the second. So if somebody said, gosh, I missed out on the first one, but now I can get second, I think we can give a couple of windows in this project so that Escalon citizens can actually be able to get a house. And I know that's really important. And obviously, with our requests and wanting your support, I mean, without the council's support here, and without you being excited about it, obviously, we're not going to do the project if that's the case, obviously. So we want you to be behind us all the way. So, all right, Rick, did you want to say something about the fees? Yeah, I could. And if you have any questions.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, fellow council members. Rick Mummert, Benchmark Engineering Principal, 915 17th Street, Modesto. Also 21074 Sexton Road, Escalon. So I'm actually brought the project to John when I saw it. I said, hey, John, this might be right up your alley. One of the fees that I was going to mention on the 4 highlighted fees, other than the multifamily rate, was the Parks and Recreation. We use 75% of the Parks and Recreation single-family fee, 75% of multifamily fee, which is still greater than 50% of the single-family fee, because Dominique mentioned that there was some regional parks that the city was looking at, so some of those funds. And then John talked about the sewer and water connections. I think that makes sense. The actual probably density here for the seniors at 1.5 people per unit was probably the norm, but at 1.75 it leaned it in the favor that of higher fees collected, but it was for simple. The fourth one that's highlighted there is just it's a San Joaquin County fee, so it doesn't involve the city, but we're asking for the multifamily rate at 9 units per acre from the county, so that's between us and the county. But at the bottom of my spreadsheet, it shows you that with 7 units, single-family residential units, the city would collect $357,915 in fees. That also does not take into consideration, maybe it did, that there's already an existing house there. So the impact fees, you'd still have to pay a normal building permit fee, but you wouldn't have to pay the impact fees, police, fire, et cetera, sorry, because the house exists. Now that house is on a well and septic tank, so below it, I think in another spreadsheet, I added the connection fees back in there. If you go straight multifamily, it's $763,000 in fees that the city would collect, and under what we're proposing is $612,000. So I'm comparing the $612,000 the way we propose it versus the 357,000 if it was a single-family infill project with a private roadway. The city not quite collecting twice as much in fees, but, and then I think the seniors probably wouldn't even generate, I don't know how many park trips and et cetera that they would use, but that definitely, I think we can improve the flow rates through working with the city engineer, et cetera. But I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Yeah, I got a couple questions.
Well, we're gonna open it up here, yeah, go ahead.
Thanks for coming tonight. So basically, according to your spreadsheet, as it's written now, the fees are $763,000, correct?
If it was straight, multifamily across the board.
And you guys are asking for a few reductions that would bring the fees to $612,000, is that correct?
Correct.
So essentially, you're looking for maybe about $150,000 total fee reduction on the project. Is that basically it?
Correct.
And the reason you're doing that is for a number of reasons, being the density, the type of person that's gonna buy the house and what they're gonna do. And according to your numbers, that's a justified reduction for this project. Is that correct?
According to my numbers, correct. We're saying that a senior, basically in my simple method, is a senior generates 50% of the waste that a single-family house with, a family of 3, 4, 5 generates, 300, 330 gallons per unit per day, where a senior doesn't generate that much. Shorter shower time, less waste, so water and sewer kind of tied to each other.
Sure. So you're just looking at it from a practical aspect and want to find a way to make it happen?
Correct.
Okay, that's all I have for now. I might have some more later, but that's all I have for now.
Other council members?
You're
David?
you're also asking for elimination of the in lieu of fees, correct? Is that what I'm understanding as well?
Exemption.
Exemption from those?
Oh, from are you talking
Affordable.
about affordable
Affordable,
housing?
yeah.
Yes.
850 to 950, the number, you're asking for that to be changed to that would go away, is that correct?
Correct, which would require an ordinance amendment because we currently don't have exemptions in the ordinance.
The
Which
big-
it's come up before in the past with council. We've just we haven't had a project moving forward, but we have discussed that and it was probably a few years ago now, where if we did have a senior project coming in, senior housing isn't exempted in there. Do we want to exempt it from this? Do we want to limit the number of housing that we would exempt it to, because we have made past ordinance amendments to that ordinance as well, where the smaller projects, where I think it's 10 units or less in there, are exempt from the affordable housing in lieu, because it is a requirement that if the project doesn't have a high number of units, it can essentially be infeasible to do when you're looking at this type of project.
What is the fee for the in lieu?
Right now, it's estimated at $850,000 to $950,000. If you do it in lieu, pay the in lieu fee. So that's for the project in total. So if you take that roughly between the units at the 850,
50 grand.
you're looking at $47,000 per unit that they would pay.
If I may,
Sorry.
what's interesting about my simple math approach to the water and sewer, let me go simple math here. If we built 2 affordable housing units, John's already gone on record that the smaller ones are selling for $330,000. Then all of a sudden I build 2 of them. I have a drawing for free houses. I save $300,000 right off the bat by giving away 2 free houses, right? $660,000 for 2 units, and I'm paying $850. I'm not paying, but John's paying $850,000 or $950,000 in lieu fee. So I just,
On that very issue, I do have a question actually to Dominique as well, and my concern is this, that's setting precedent, and we're looking at setting precedent in a number of ways, and frankly, I think is a great, what we talked about the last meeting, I think is a fantastic project. And my concern that we might be setting some precedents that we might regret later, yeah, so that's what I want to work through. On the last page of the what you had, the dissertation regarding this topic tonight. It said that if the city council wants to exempt this project from the ordinance because it is a deed-restricted senior housing project, they will need to amend, because remember, we only have so many choices. Either charge the fees or, or set land aside, which is a non-starter in this situation because of its economy of scale. They will need to amend the ordinance to provide an exception for this type of housing, which would then apply to all deed-restricted senior housing projects in the future. The question is this: who determines from here on out if their project is deed-restricted senior housing? Would it be the developer,
Would that
or
be
would it
our
be the
action?
or would it be the council?
So typically, it's pretty rare that somebody that wants to build senior housing, like, wouldn't originally be proposing that. So in his case, he came with senior housing. I think that's how it would work most, that if they're proposing senior housing, most developers, I would say all of them that have been building, would know that if you're gonna propose senior housing, it has to be deed restricted. So if they confirm that deed restriction, and that's why staff is suggesting that if you were to open up that ordinance amendment to specify that it is deed restricted senior housing, because it stays that way, it's recorded on the property, and it stays that way until council decides otherwise. And so maybe 50 years from now, somebody comes forward and wants to see if they could have the deed restriction removed, then council would address that at that time, but at least it would be recorded as such. And so, from my stance, any developer that came forward asking to, or interested in building senior housing, if they said that word, I would trigger deed restriction to make sure it stays that way.
Well, because that's my concern.
Yeah.
They all will from here on out.
It
you
would,
know.
if we deed
Yeah.
restricted, it will unless a future council decides otherwise.
And when you made that change to the ordinance, it would specify a deed-restricted senior project.
Correct.
Okay. And that ordinance change, can I assume goes through the first reading, and so
It
we're
is,
talking about a month?
it's
month and a
Title
half.
17, so it would go for to Planning Commission first for review and comment with a recommendation to the council, and then it would go to council.
And
So we're looking at, roughly 60 to 90 days to process.
And does everybody here, including the audience, understand that if we went that route, trying to find some way to work this out, that it's gonna take a while?
So just to ask, so by eliminating on this project, we changed the ordinance, and these fees went away, so the auction land project that you just discussed earlier, there would have been fees associated with that project, those go away as well then?
I'm sorry,
For in lieu of?
for like the other project?
Yeah, for the other project.
I mean, and that depends on how, so in an ordinance amendment, obviously, staff would want to provide you some other information on recommendations for how it should be written. We would definitely look into that and try to get some recommendations or alternatives. You could have, across the board, deed-restricted senior housing, 55 and up. Deed-restricted senior housing, 62 and up. You could identify the terms yourself, because it's our ordinance. You could identify the number of units, so at so many units, we want to, it has to be this amount of units or less. It just depends. And so obviously, the more units that they build, the easier, I would think, and the more feasible it is to provide that affordable housing, because you have more units to spread that cost you have to pay, either for the in lieu fee or the additional money you may lose from creating a unit that's affordable to offset around multiple units. In this case, this project is smaller, and that's why it hits it a little harder.
So we can actually put wording in there to create a
Yeah, I mean, and we could,
projects
we'd
20
be
or
happy to look
fewer.
into that if you want additional alternatives or items to
Yeah.
look at for that.
Yeah, because I get the economy of scale, I get it, you can't spread it out very well among 18 houses, I get that, but again, we're creating a precedent that.
Yeah,
just wanna be
well,
real
what's
careful.
interesting, what Dominique said earlier also this evening, is that generally the city's running 10% rather than the full, whatever the other
15,
percentage,
yeah.
15%, and that the 10% is moderate income housing, right? If you go to moderate income housing, I wonder what that qualification would be based on San Joaquin's medium 250,000. So if you elected to go that route, 250,000 minus 330,000, the the offset's 160,000 rather than what we're looking at here tonight of the 900,000. So what's interesting also, and it kind of all works together, is senior housing has zero impact on the schools, but the schools are collecting full boat school fees here, which is over $1 million. And John's had discussions with the school district, and they were citing state law. I think that state law had to be less than 30 units to qualify for a reduction.
More than
35.
35,
More than
yeah.
35.
Yeah.
So that's a shame, because you can't go do a 18 or 9 or 20.
And that's a problem with this project.
Yeah, so.
Full school fees, even though seniors will have no children.
Have you talked to the school district about it, or any of the board of supervisors?
Yeah, go ahead and step up, so those on the, yeah.
Yeah, we have not started formal discussions with them. We wanted to make sure that the council here was excited and wanted to support it, but that would be the next thing we'd be doing, would be talking to them. We have actually penciled the project, though, with the school fees at this point, because we do know that their position is right now that they want the full fees paid. We would love to have them cut it down to at least a lower level, and we were gonna ask for that also.
Okay. Well, and on that very same subject, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, and by the way, I very much appreciate as well the rest of the council, you doing everything you can to open up for Escalon residents, within the law and what you can legally do. So we appreciate that very much. When you did the penciling of this project, can I ask, your original assumption was that you'd be paying full freight on the school fees as well as the city fees?
We use multifamily fees. One of the things that happened, this project we started working on this, I think, at the end of September, early October, I think it was about October. And we decided to try to come up with a design for the property and see what the best use was, and we started talking senior. It was really Rick's brainchild to do it. And so a lot of things have happened, but probably the biggest thing that's happened on this project, and it's happening with a lot of projects, is that if you're trying to build something and keep the price down because of the high cost of building materials that have just gone crazy. I mean, lumber's doubled. I mean, I'm paying $50,000 for a lumber pack. I used to pay $25,000 for 6 months ago. But everything that has pushed up, and when you take that along with the fees, and I think we miscalculated fees slightly when we started this. There's some additional fees, San Joaquin County and some other things that come into play that we missed. So when we went back, we said, okay, here's what the land is, here's what our construction cost is, here's our maximum permit, how do we get there? And so then Rick started doing analysis to say, okay, let's look at the fees, and I mean, it's important to say this. When we talk about multifamily fees, you were comparing the multifamily fee schedule to what we're asking for. It's not a great amount. But remember, we have to get to the multifamily fee schedule too, right? I mean, I'm not sure that that's a given either. Is it that we would be single-family fees, or do you think it's a given that we're a multifamily fee, Dominique?
I mean, right now, the way our fees are calculated and constructed, the project is a single-family residential project.
Yeah, so because we detached them.
Yeah.
So because they detached them, we'd be paying full single-family. So we're really asking for you to qualify it because of the density, because I do believe it is a multifamily density. So by qualifying as a multifamily, then we get to those multifamily fees. And then one step further on sewer, water, and park, we're asking you to cut that a little bit more. So that's really it. And then you are correct that if you did do an ordinance, some type of an adjustment on there, I will just say that I think that excluding 55 plus senior housing, I think from that is a great thing. I really do. And I think that the project that may be coming in, that I heard that's a real affordable, and what they're doing is they're using HUD, they're using the Section 8 HUD people to finance it. They're using tax credits. It's a great thing, and that may create all of the affordable housing that you need for your seniors. So that's a great mitigation factor. And if they didn't have to pay, the inclusive, or I think that's a positive also there. So we as developers take all the costs, we put them together, we pass it on. So again, Rick says I pay it. I don't really pay it. It's your Escalon citizen that comes in and buys it, just like at the gas pump. It's us to pay the taxes on that fuel, not anybody else. So yeah, go ahead. Thank you.
So the other thing I wanted to mention was we talk about costs. When I first approached John and I did some rough numbers for John on this project, I was hoping the houses would come in at $299 to $350. That was our original goal. And then you start looking at where we want to put some amenity in there. So we have 8 additional parking spaces. The garage setbacks are 18 feet, so you could still fit the cars in the garage. 2-car garage has 2 cars, 1-car garage has 1 car, but we put in like 8 additional stalls. Well, it was kind of a waste behind it. You couldn't put a house, right? So we opened up to a barbecue area, et cetera, like that. So to try and put amenities that cost also. The other area we had was the SSGID easement in the back. So right around where the fire turnaround is. So we're gonna landscape that SSGID easement. And so then we gotta maintain that, install it, maintain it. It's like a mini park, right? We can't put anything in it, but it's still driving up costs. Then to stay with the quality theme, interlocking pavers for the roadway rather than a concrete or a paved driveway, right? So the residents feel like that with the entry coming off of First Street, that it feels like a gated community, right? It just doesn't have the gates, but it's upscale. And then by tearing down that existing home, then that kind of just opens it up to like new, like it stands on its own rather than piecemealing it, I guess you'd say.
Well, I know we've been discussing the in-lieu housing fees a little bit, and I know we're in a tight spot for that. There's a little bit of room where we could work in terms of trying to, okay, if we did do this, because we would have to change the ordinance, there's a little bit of room we could say, okay, projects fewer than 20. But on the fee reductions to multiple family, where are we open to setting a precedent there that we might regret later? Where are we open on that one? Are we open on that one?
It worries me.
Well, I guess with any decision that you make, I mean, it could set a precedence. But, I mean, your factor that you would fall back on here is the points that
Hey, council, this is City Attorney Mark Velasquez. May I suggest before the council discusses amongst themselves, we still need to hear from the rest of the audience.
Okay.
We've been asking questions and talking with the developer, which is fine. But if we're going to get into, discussions between council members, then we need to first hear from the rest of the citizens first.
Any more
Mark, I
questions
had
for me?
planned on that, but I was gonna let them finish themselves, then move it out to the public and then back to the council, but thank you for the reminder. Okay.
If there's
so
no other questions for me.
Let's open it up to the public here. If anyone would like to come down and discuss this, you may come to the podium and just give us your name, please. And if you have something you'd like to add to this evening's discussion, you're welcome to do so. And you're limited to 5 minutes.
I'll go. It's Kurt again.
Hold on, Kurt.
Kurt, wait a moment, please. We have somebody at the podium.
All right.
Thank you.
Name's David Willis, 425 Sultana Way. You're worried about the cost. You say interlocking pavers on the driveways?
the roadway.
The roadway.
Actual roadway.
How close will the trees be to the street? Because we have a problem right out here on the sidewalks, uplifting the bricks and people can't walk by. And interlocking pavers would be so much more expensive than regular blacktop. You could save some money there. Hey, if you really feel it's gotta look good, you can paint the asphalt red or something. I'm just saying, if you wanna save cost, there's one of your costs. I know this has nothing to do with fees, I apologize. But if they're looking to save money, they don't have to go with interlocking pavers. If they get out of whack, a senior could trip and fall. Then you got problems. Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the crowd here that would like to come up and speak on behalf of the item? If not, we're gonna go back to the gentleman on the phone.
Mr. Danziger?
Okay.
Mr. Danziger.
Uh,
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Alts. I'd like to ask the developer a question that I've always been curious about from the developers over at Westwood Country who couldn't put in a multi-unit family dwelling there behind, I think it's Dollar General. They said because it wouldn't pencil out. So can we discuss that for a minute? How much profit per unit as it stands right now, if you had to pay all the fees, would you make per unit?
Oh, you wouldn't have a profit. If you have to pay the fee for the inclusionary housing and full residential fees, no, the project, it would be upside down. We'd pay money out of our pocket to build it.
All right. So this is a sketchy operation, and you're going to make a high-end unit that theoretically a senior who may be already living in the city would pay more money for it than they could make selling their house. Is that right?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
I think you're over competitive with the existing housing market. For example, I would love to move into a smaller unit at some point, but I would be paying just as much for the unit you're building, smaller, than what I'm living in right now. So I don't see an advantage of doing that. I'm looking at it from my perspective, obviously, but other people might do so too. The question about the high end is eating into your costs too. So I would address the next question to council, and that is if it's a good idea to reduce fees for this or any other developer, then we should go back and look at the fees like we do every year and reduce them, because if they're so high and that it becomes prohibitive for developers there, you may want to look at that, because other people have already paid these fees. The fee saving, while I was listening, I did a calculation. That's $833 a unit savings if they get the reduction in the fees that they're asking the city for at $150,000 divided by 18. So I don't know that that's a big cost. When you get to the enterprise funds, water, sewer, storm, are you actually able to touch those fees? Because those things are outside, I would think. They have their own enterprise fund. I don't know how that's going to be affected by being able to reduce those fees, if that's a separate step. So those are just some of the things I'm thinking of right now. If there was an affordable housing unit or units, could we apply our in lieu fees, which looking at the budget for like $875,000, any of that towards those two units? And I'll leave it at that.
Could I make one comment?
Sure, of course.
Thank you. Absolutely. Thank you very much, man. First of all, the $150,000, I think it's $8,033 per, not 800. But again, going back, we're talking about single-family fees versus multifamily, and then the additional $150. So we're talking about a lot more than that. We're probably talking about more like $20,000 a unit, and then the $50,000 that would be on the other. So we're really talking probably $70,000 a unit. And I would just like to say one thing. When you look at new construction today and you get a new home, I've been doing this 30-some years, and we've been doing it. They're not built like they used to be, and that's really true. They're not built like they used to be. So when you get a brand new home today, these units they'd meet all the new Title 24 requirements. They would have the solar on them and everything. Your utility bills are almost zero. You have no maintenance on them potentially, other than very, very basic upkeep for years and years. Everything's brand new. They're super insulated and warm. I mean, I can't tell you how much different a new home today is, even in the last 10 years, even versus a house built 10 years ago. So things have, with LED lighting and all of the things that's going on, it's a totally different house. And then you add to that automation, you add to that, nice finishes. And people, yes, they're moving down, they're moving out. Maybe they're moving out of their 2,500, 3,000 foot house, and so they're now coming down to 1,200, 1,300 square feet. But they still got a really nice kitchen with a really nice island. They still have nice, they have nice master bedrooms. So yeah, you're paying absolutely correctly. It's a premium for the small square footage, but I don't know where you can buy a house today that, the average house is probably, 2,000, 2,200 square feet, and everything we're seeing right now is $250 a foot. So that's, we're seeing $500,000 pretty much everywhere for that in the valley, and that's inexpensive compared to everything around, going north or east or west, I mean. So with that said, I think you have to look at it that what you're giving people is you're giving them a premium product that's brand new, that they can enjoy, that has the lifestyle still of a single-family resident because we didn't attach them. And so I think it's great. You still got a patio, back patio, a little yard, you can have an animal. I mean, it's a nice way to live. And that's what you're giving them. And Rick is right. We're trying to make it an asset to the city, so everybody's proud of the, vintage living, it's a good project. So that's just that's our plan. And yes, we make on a unit, this isn't brain surgery, but, we pick up anywhere from, 12%. If I can make 12% per unit on every project I build, that's fantastic. So 12 to 15%, we always aim at 15, we make about 12. So you can do the numbers off the gross sale price, and that'll give you our profit. And if you take and add the 70,000 back in, even if we add a lot of that on, you can see that the profit goes away. So there's not big money, and that I think people are under the influence that we're making these huge profits. It's not the case anymore. Used to be years ago, when I did it years ago, we could make a lot of money per house. It isn't that way anymore. There's just too many hands in the pot. Yeah.
We're paying almost twice as much in fees as it was.
Right, so this is an infill, and I agree with Rick, this is an infill, and that's a great thing, because I know anytime you can infill, that's great. And what it does allow is hopefully we'll get 18 people in Escalon to sell their houses, move in, and then those houses will go to some new people or other people or kids, and so it'll be good for your community. But it is an infill piece, and that is something I agree, Rick, to always keep in mind. Anyway, thank you very much.
What is your rough build cost, if I can ask? Are you looking at 150 a square foot to build?
Yeah, you're looking at right now, we're looking at between 125 and 135, depending on what the amenities are in a normal, that's a normal product. When you get to smaller square footage, it tends to get a little more per square foot. So, but if I was building you a 2,000-foot house right now, my cost would be probably about 125 a foot. If I'm building a 1,200-foot house, it might push 150.
The idea of the pavements not being involved there, the interlock pavements, I understand the value of that being in the project. It adds a beautiful setting to the project. I get that. My question, are we using fiberglass tubs in these?
No, we wouldn't use any fiberglass tubs.
So you're gonna tile everything?
Yeah, things will they're either wrapped with wrap materials, or they're tiled. We really like doing, we like using tiled shower pans. Pretty much everything we do is a tiled shower pan, but then we may wrap it with a solid surface material. Very popular now, not having so much grout to have to keep.
What about your kitchen countertops? What are you doing?
Maybe granite or quartz countertops.
Your appliances?
Appliance would be KitchenAid. Yeah.
Okay, and then your PEX, everything's PEX?
Everything is PEX, yes.
Concrete floor?
It'd be concrete floor, we'd be using the on-demand hot water systems, and we'd be using the new HRV systems.
So you have the tankless water heaters?
They're tankless, and we'd be using HRV, which HRV is where now our system, the ceilings are fully apart. They're conditioned space, just like the living space. So you no longer have an attic that gets to be 110. Your attic's the same temperature as your house. And so we use an HRV system which recirculates all the air throughout it because they're so tight. We got to keep moving the air.
Are those tile roofs as well?
Tile roofs, yes. We're projecting a tile roof.
Exterior
project.
walls are 2x4 or 2x6?
Depends on Title 24. I think on these small units, I think 2x4 will work on these. As the houses get bigger, we might have to go 2x6.
That's all Title 24.
That works out through the Title 24.
And the windows, double pane, obviously?
Oh, yeah.
One particular brand?
We like to use Milgard, Anderson,
Good companies.
brands like that. We use Moen fixtures, we use Moen, Kohler, I mean, everything.
200 amp services per unit?
All 200 amp, yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Any other questions? Jeff, would you like to say anything?
I like the project. I think it'd be a shame to make them duplexes. I like the design you have. The layout is ideal for that location. I can wrap my head around multifamily fees for you because of the density. I like the deed restriction to make sure we got 55 and older in there. I like the project. The only issue I would have, we got a couple. One is reducing the connection fees further beyond the multifamily, because I think I can justify multifamily across the board for the project. And then when you get to the affordable housing in lieu, I'm not sure yet whether that's worth having a couple units or 3 units in that category, or looking to amend our ordinance to maybe a project 20 units or more, or under 20 would be exempt. I'm leaning that way towards an ordinance amendment. But in order to get this project through and the work that you put into it, I would like to see it move forward as proposed.
Thank you. The one thing I would say about the pavers on the street, just, we've done a lot we do a lot every day of this type of thing. The great thing about pavers is if you do get tree roots or you do get problems, they're easily picked up, you can fix it and lay them back down. I mean, if you have a sewer issue, you have a water, that's the great thing about pavers. You just pick them up and lay them back down. And they're about twice the price of asphalt or concrete, but long-term, they're beautiful, and, you know, they do last pretty much forever. So you don't have to paving has to be redone, it has to be seal coated and redone. Pavers, other than if they get a little bit bumpy, you can relay them out, but otherwise they last forever pretty much, so.
I still wouldn't put, the trees any close to pavers.
Yeah. Well, just
I have
trees
lots
and
of pictures as to why.
You might want to put some tree wells if this project goes through. Okay.
We'll be making sure they're in yards. and
What
not
room
in
do
the
we
street.
have on the,
Wait, before we go there, is there any other questions over here in this situation?
I'm looking at it a little differently with the numbers, with the single family notation, with the numbers here. If they were to pay full boat, you're looking at 900 grand plus the in lieu of. So if you're looking at the 900 grand for fees and then the reduction, you're looking at about 300,000 there, another 900. So full boat kick request right now, in my opinion, is they're looking to reduce over $1 million, 1.2, give or take. And it's a large number. Not that I'm not willing to negotiate and talk about that number, but when you get it down to the 1.75 people per unit, it's 32 people. You're giving each person a credit of $38,000 to move into a neighborhood, into a house. That's hard. I know they're senior and everything, but that's an awful lot of money for a very small, select few people in this town to change our ordinance going forward.
My feeling is,
That's what I struggle hard with right now, is that amount of money per person in this project. And it's I love the project. It's just the size of it, it makes it so difficult for me to get over the hump of that much money per person that's gonna live in this development. It's a pretty good kick.
I agree with you, David, and my concern, along those same lines, is I don't believe those homes will all be sold to Escalon people, first of all. Because to sell your home in this town, to buy one of those towns, there's not enough of a margin to buy one of those homes to justify selling yours. That's another problem I have. The fees concern me. I think Jeff brought up some good points. I would agree with his analysis. I mean, it makes sense. We could find some way to help make it work, but I agree with you. We're talking a lot of money here. And I don't want to subsidize and take away from other people in this community that have had to pay those fees. Our water, to me, is sacred. We have nothing but raised our water rates right through the roof. And I don't feel like I want to share that. I want to share that burden with the rest of people that build in this town. I don't want us just being paying all those water rates. And now we're going to get hit with all kinds of new sewer rates. It's just, not sewer, but garbage rates. You know, I like the project too. I think the project's a very nice project. I think it's designed well. I think the pavers look great. If you took the pavers out, you would definitely diminish the value of the project. I think people would go, wait a minute, I'm gonna pay $300,000, that's just what I got. It's the pavers that help sell that project, I get it.
I agree.
But your point, I agree with Jeff. There's gonna be some middle ground somewhere, but I don't know where it is. Because of the way it's written right now, I'm not in favor of it. But I am in favor of the project, but we need to rearrange some of the arrangements here. They're just, to me, it's too lopsided. That's just how I feel about it. Robert?
well, no, I mean, like I say, I feel the same way. That's why, I didn't know what kind of room we have to take those connection fees down, legally, even to the multifamily, an equivalent rate to that. What leeway do we have?
You have.
You have
all of
discretion.
it. You have
Okay,
complete
so we got that.
discretion.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, so maybe that's where there's some room to work. I know, unfortunately, the way that ordinance is written regarding the affordable housing and lieu fee, yeah, I'm, again, with Councilmember Legero, geez, any way to do it, it's like the onus is on us, and we're gonna be setting a precedent, so we gotta really think about this.
Yeah.
Maybe we might need more time to think about this part, I don't know.
I don't have a problem with that.
I'd like to say a few things. So I want to work through my thoughts on this. So one thing that I think is being said, which I think is a false idea that's going around, is that these houses are gonna be, too expensive for Escalon people to move into. And I think the problem with that is how are we supposed to sit up here and dictate who buys new houses that are built in this town? I don't think that's the role of the local government, as much as you want to keep everybody here. So say somebody did move out of their house in Escalon and bought one of these houses, well, now who's gonna buy their other house? Because their other house was probably more than what this one cost, right? Is another Escalon person, do you see what I'm saying? It's just a false idea. And so first of all, I don't agree with that. The second thing is, I'm really in favor of this project. I think it looks great. I think it is, I like how it's more upscale. Every time I hear affordable or Section 8 housing, I don't understand why people get excited about that, just because it's a really cheap thing for people to live in. I don't quite understand that. If we want a nice community, we want it to be upper scale, we want to have a nice looking town, I don't understand why we want to go and hunt for the cheapest guy on the block to build stuff for people to move into. Another thing, I am 100% in favor of finding a way to adjust the ordinance for this project to move forward. I don't know exactly how that would look, but I do want to go on record saying we have discretion. It's up to us. We can make it suit our needs and the needs of the developer to make this project happen. And another thing, it's none of our business or anybody else's business exactly what anybody's going to make in profit on this with respect to what Kurt's question. That's not the point. The point is, and they want to price the house a certain way and build it a certain way. It's because they think they can sell it. Otherwise, they wouldn't do that. That's how the free market works. And then the last thing I want to say is this is a great project. These don't come around to us very often. What we're going to get long-term via property tax and sales tax from these people, nice people in the town, I think I'm all for it. It's a go for me. So I would like to find a way to do it.
I think everybody's in favor of that. I think it's just a matter of how to do it. I don't think we're all in favor of the circumstances they set in front of us right now. If we can find some wiggle room and make some adjustments, it might go through. I think that's where we're at.
Yeah, well,
We all like the project. It's a great project. But
I know we like it, but the last thing is, it doesn't pencil if they have to pay $1 million in lieu fees.
Yeah, but we're
They're not gonna make any money, so they're not gonna do the project.
that's
So we-
fine. But
we
do we
would-
subsidize them with the taxpayer dollars is the other
So at
problem.
that point, our city government is floating their profit and giving them the profit for the project.
Exactly.
Is what
Well,
that means.
but
If
what's
it
the
says-
benefit to the town, though?
I have a question. So if it was to be single-family residences put on that parcel, we have limits on the lot, how small the lots can go, right? So are we correct in thinking that we could have 6, 7, 8 single-family residences on that 2 acres?
So because it's a 2-acre parcel, our municipal code states that any project that's residential over 1 acre requires a PD. So we approved that PD or plan development ordinance, I believe back in either 2015 or 2016, that is supposed to add flexibility. So it's basically allowing a developer to propose a residential project on those pieces of land. And it's so long as they, bring it to planning commission and bring it to council and planning commission reviews it, makes their recommendation and council approves it, they can modify anything within the municipal code in terms of size of lots, densities, setbacks, height limitations, 2-story, 1-story, all of that stuff that's in our municipal code is open for flexibility. So it's allowing that developer to become more creative with that parcel for that residential project.
So generally speaking, with a typical single-family residence and a typical lot size that we have in town, how many units would we be able to normally put on that?
As is, the way it's staying on, it's 1 lot right now, it would be 1 house and 1 accessory dwelling unit. So if you subdivided it according to our sizing, it would be 6 or 7 lots, given how you did it. If you had a straight road going in, if you turned it into a cul-de-sac, 6 to 7 units, yes.
And I'm gonna make a big jump forward and ask if that's, it was considered, the project is a senior housing project. And I'm just wondering if there has been any consideration towards it as a single-family use project.
Bingo.
We've had, in the beginning, I believe you did show a scenario where it would be single-family residential, 7 units, and we have had past people who were interested in purchasing the property that were also proposing it that way. They also advised that they couldn't make it feasible for what they wanted to build. And like I mentioned at the last meeting, we advised them, if you're looking, you need fee reductions and you can justify it, you could put a request in and go to council. We just haven't had anybody that's been willing to make that step. And so we've had people before trying to fit 6 or 7 single-family houses on there, and it wasn't financially feasible for them to do so. And so they've moved away from the project. And they did propose that in the beginning.
Okay.
But I think senior housing, I had emphasized to them that we were looking for senior housing, and that's probably what more or less pushed them in that direction. Was that
Sure.
what we were really looking for, is senior housing?
When I was looking for senior housing, that wasn't what I had in mind. What
I mean, and this
referring
was,
I don't think we have an issue so much for senior housing. We were
Yeah.
looking for affordable senior housing, and we got this under the guise of senior housing, which is fine, and it's a great project. But for the numbers, we need to talk those things over. I'm not comfortable with the way they are now. I like the project, but it's just, to me, it's a little too, we're giving way too much out.
And on the presentation, you've got the 7, it looks like there's 7 units for the single family that shows up with the $357,000 fees that would be generated for the city. That's based on 7,
That's if they did the 7 single
they
family.
did 7 single families.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's more realistic. If we were to go with a single-family resident lot, we would generate $357,000 versus $763,000 for multifamily, and then you're asking to kind of split that for the 612.
For 3 of the
Right.
fees.
But does a single-family pencil in your case?
The problem with single-family, this is just my opinion, is that it's not, having a little street that comes in like that with these houses sitting like that I don't know that any one of you up here would want to buy that. I mean, you could tell me if you would. I just consider it to be kind of a secondary kind of layout when you put a little street in like that, where for senior housing, it's fantastic because it gives a community feel. But I don't know, I'd rather be on a normal street, on a normal, I feel like it's kind of a secondary type of a use for that project. Probably not the best use, but it would, work. Let me say one thing on the water and sewer. These people would be paying your water and sewer fees. I know you'd mentioned that the fees, they would be paying all the normal water, sewer, garbage, all the normal fees. And let me just say this, if you believe that the water and sewer is a really tough thing to get there, and I get it because you guys have done a lot of studies and work on figuring out what your fees need to be. I think if we got to the multifamily level on all of the fees, including even water and sewer, we'd be probably still okay. That does not kill the deal, okay? What kills the deal is paying, well, the school fee for one is a big deal killer, but we're gonna work on that, but it's the inclusionary housing element. That really comes down to if you're able to modify, and I think it's a good thing for communities to say, hey, we modify for certain things, and it is setting a precedent, there's no question about that. So, but I would just request that maybe we go with all multifamily fees, with the exception maybe of the park fee, which I still believe is a less impact, and then that we go ahead and still would ask you to amend your ordinance for that. And that would be, because I hear you loud and clear on that sewer and water, because that sewer and water is something you guys put a lot of work and study into, and that's not gonna break it. I mean, that's probably $100,000, so it's not gonna break it.
So keeping this as a multifamily density, for argument's sake, and not forcing this to be modified into duplexes. I mean, if we could say, no, we want duplexes, and then we're stuck with multifamily, right? So then we generate the fees, and you'd be paying the multifamily fees, and you'd be paying $763,000. Okay? So if we say no, they're detached, and we stick with single-family residence, it's a deal breaker. Then, if we go back and try and find somebody to come in and say, okay, I want to build 7 single-family residents in that 2-acre parcel,
Not gonna happen.
then we're gonna generate, well, it hasn't happened, cause you guys, it doesn't pencil out, right?
Well, it's the wrong configuration, that's the
Right.
problem.
But even if we, in best case scenario, we were able to get 7 single-family residents on that parcel, we're only gonna generate, by your calculation, about half the fees we would calling it a multifamily. So, you know, again, it's pretty easy for me to wrap my head around setting it at the multifamily, because it's gonna generate a pretty sizable chunk of money for the city. It's gonna get more units into a feasible project that's gonna pencil for everybody. So that's, if we did that, I have no problem. I like the project. I don't want you to change it to duplexes to get the multifamily. We call it multifamily rates because of the density. We generate that kind of revenue for the city. And then if we need to modify an ordinance to say projects of 20 or less, gets exempted from the.
Senior.
From the, or senior.
Deed restricted
Deed-restricted
senior
senior.
projects.
That,
And that magic number's 20, all right?
yeah, 20, we're at 10 right now, right?
There's-
10 or less,
there's-
it's exempt from,
So.
yeah.
if we
Mr.
were-
Mayor, this is Mark Velasquez. Could I address a concern or raise a concern for the
You
council to
certainly may.
consider? Thank you. The biggest concern that I'm seeing here is some type of waiver of the in lieu of fees. And I say this because, well, number one, we actually have to adjust our ordinances to make this happen. But the biggest thing is, at the end of the day, you're going to have let's call it the upper echelon or a high-end community developer, high-end community owners of these houses are going to be the ones that did not have to pay. First of all, didn't have to build the affordable houses, and then didn't even have to pay the in lieu of fee. I think the council needs to consider that we're going to allow an upper end development, but somehow the upper end of the people that can afford all this, because it's not affordable housing, so it's going to be the upper end, can escape the affordable housing requirement or the affordable housing in lieu of fee. I think it's a large concern that I could address, to the council via some kind of memorandum or something, but it hasn't been discussed yet, and I wanted to raise that issue. It should be a red flag. The other couple little concerns is, keep in mind, deed restriction doesn't mean that everybody that living there is going to be seniors. So, and I just heard a wonderful article on NPR that talked about, in this economy right now, more than ever since World War II, you have adult children, not just children living with their parents, because that's the only way to afford it. So the assumption that the developer has presented that there will only be 1.7 persons living there and that they're going to be seniors, I think needs to be reevaluated. If anything, we need to see why they came up with that and their basis for that, because I don't know if that's quite true. And on top of that, so they're asking for another point, an assumption there's going to be a reduction of the fees they're seeking is because there's going to be less water use or less of these other uses. But again, what the trend is, more people are living in smaller spaces or, 1 or 2 bedrooms, not less. And the deed restriction doesn't stop that in this case. And then finally, the issue of there was an issue of, in 50 years or so was kind of the put out there, we could worry about somebody coming back and asking for the deed restrictions to this council be removed. The number one issue that comes up with these age deed restrictions is the issue of the children, as soon as they inherit the land, turn around and want to own it or sell it. And so I would assume within a couple of years, maybe even with 1 year, depends on how old the first persons are that purchased the property, you're actually going to start getting requests pretty quickly about, hey, let's remove the deed restrictions to allow the children to live it, the children to own it or to sell it. But I do want to go back to this in lieu of fee is a large concern that I'd like the council to consider further.
Okay, would you like to say something? Mark?
Sure, thank you, Mr.
You're
Mayor,
welcome. Go ahead.
Council members. One of the things that I've been involved with personally on other senior projects is the deed restrictions. You can go as long as you want on these deed restrictions. I've been involved with 40-year deed restrictions. Then they kind of take care of themselves after 40 years. But I don't know if it's the CCNRs or what mechanism that it's specifically spelt out in that document, in that language, that no grandchild can be there for more than 2 weeks a year. I understand the tough times right now, but it becomes I guess, not a homeowner association deal, but you couldn't have a 35-year-old child move in with you because it's not allowed.
Who would enforce that?
Bingo. Yeah, who's gonna enforce
CCNRs
all
don't
that?
enforce anything.
I don't know
how
what
they're
I
written.
don't know what the document was
Yeah.
that in the specific.
That's good luck with that.
I did a 100-unit senior project, and it was specifically written in there to protect against that they didn't have, because one of the questions was, if I'm 55 and my wife's 53, can I move in? Well, I could be the owner, but she can't live there for more than 2 weeks a year, and I don't know what the document is. I'd have to go back and look at my old records, but it seems to me that you could put something in language.
So regarding CCNRs, I've seen a few different ones, and yeah, there are some that I've seen in town that are written, and they really don't have anybody that falls back on. But ones that I've seen that have been more so completed better, they create some type of advisory board, either with members that purchase into the houses and they elect, or it becomes something where the developer creates a little 3-person board. And then if you are looking to do something different than the CCNRs, or you're looking because you see your neighbors allowing their adult son to live there and he's been staying there for a really long time, it's reported to whoever that board is, and they have 30 days to, investigate and provide a response, much like code enforcement is through the city. And then they hold monthly meetings or quarterly meetings, depending. And because this is a planned development, we could definitely make sure that the CCNRs are written a certain way to try to detour that type of activity as much as we can. Obviously, since Mark's brought it up, we'll be looking at legal counsel looking at that for us when that time comes. But it definitely can be written that way. But yeah, it's a process, and we need to make sure that process closes on the other end. That if it's created, there's gonna be a board in place that's going to enforce it. And obviously, it's not gonna be the city, so it has to be in there where it's either property owners that move in, that hold the meetings, or some other people that represent those.
But how are we gonna enforce that board is in continuum?
It's not our
5
problem.
years, 10 years from
It's not our
now?
problem.
Not our problem.
Right, so therefore, the whole concept's flawed. I mean, you could end up not having an active board, and next thing you know, 5, 10 years from now,
I mean, and yeah,
you could have, the kiddos living and just,
and they have processes for that too. I've had an issue where there was a board for a CCNR that everybody on the board had passed. And so somebody was looking into turning in their neighbor for something because they're not following the CCNRs. And it does take a group of them to come together in that neighborhood and find it a big enough issue to where they would obtain an attorney and go through the process to take over the CCNR. But yes, private matter of that subdivision, which
ends
this
up
would be its own
litigation.
private subdivision with its maintenance agreements, with its CCNRs. So the city wouldn't be a part of
I got a
that.
couple things I wanna say. First of all, we talked about the impact on this project. If we didn't waive these fees, it would raise the cost of the units how much? 30,000, 35,000,
No,
40,000?
it was 50 for the affordable fees.
For the in lieu of stuff.
Yeah, the in lieu of.
70, some odd thousand.
So it raised 70,000 per unit, is that what we're talking? If we don't find a way to find some wiggle room?
Correct.
Okay. That was my first question. My second thing I wanna say is, this is something that require a little more time to think out. So how do we do that without, we're still into the project, we're not dumping the project, but we need to figure out something that can appease both sides. Because we're a little far apart here. I appreciate the consideration for the water and sewer, that's a big one. But we need to sit down now that the attorney's brought up some things we need to hash out. I think we need to revisit this and come back with them again, because again, it is a great project, but there's just a lot of loose ends we need to tighten up here. I
Is
would
it
feel
something to make a
comfortable-
motion for like
We could
something?
continue it.
Yeah.
Continue it.
So could we have a motion to continue this, and let's go over, let's hammer out what we've talked about tonight and try to find a way to make this work.
Sure.
Because, if he's willing to agree to the water and sewer connection fees and that, it takes a bigger load off of me, personally, and I think the town too. Yeah, I'm not gonna wanna go around and tell everybody in town they didn't pay any water fee and stuff, because I almost got killed for the water raises we already had. I'm not gonna go through that. It's just that is more than I wanna encumber. So, I think the council's in favor of discussing this more and working, maybe finding a solution we can do this, is that correct?
I would agree with that.
Okay, so we'll take a motion to, what is it you suggest?
Well, let's put a time frame on it.
Well, we'll do it the next meeting. I mean, that's not a problem. We'll just get on it.
Do what?
We'll try to get it resolved.
Okay.
I mean, I wanted
We could
to,
continue it to the next meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and then let's try to come up with something and stay in communications with the builders and tell them where we're at, and let's try to work this thing out.
Sure.
If we can do that, great. If not, then life goes on.
I had one last question. In the past of development in this town, have we ever done something like this with in lieu fees? Have we ever adjusted them or found a way to waive them, or with the 10 senior house? What have we done in the past?
In
What
the
precedence is set right now?
Past, we did update our municipal code to waive the 10 units or less.
Okay,
And there were a few other items that were listed in there. I believe we tried to match it to subdivision, because at one time it applied to every house that was constructed. And so even if you built one single house and you owned the property, you were paying the in lieu fee if you didn't build it affordable.
okay.
And so we updated that to exempt single parcels.
So that ordinance amendment is kind of like what we possibly will do in this situation.
Correct. It would be another exemption,
Thank you.
an additional exemption.
Yeah, I'd move that we would continue this item to the next meeting, and at that point, it'll be discussed and hopefully a decision made.
Okay?
And we will okay. Do I have a second in the
Second.
motion? We have a motion and second to continue to the next meeting. All those-
I have a point of debate
Go ahead.
on that too. And I don't know if there's any way that we could, I understand the school board's in a tight spot, I guess from the state, but again, if we were trying to work this out, and if they have absolutely no way to work any of this out, and this project doesn't go, then they have nothing as well. And I think that, that's gotta be remembered. We'll have nothing, and then they'll have nothing. And the developer and the family and everything, so
Life
it'd be
is a
great.
compromise.
Great to have some compromise on everybody's part.
Life is a compromise. Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second, to continue this to the next meeting and have it resolved hopefully by then.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries 5-0. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, gentlemen. We'll do what we can.
Thank you very much.
Okay, boy, that was a heavy-duty deal. All right, I want to, in this next week or two, we're gonna be going through this, trying to get a solution for this. I want Mark involved in it as much as possible to get some feedback from him and address his concerns. That's why we pay him the big bucks, we need to listen to him. We may not agree with everything he says, and we have the right not to agree, but I still wanna hear everything he has to say from a legal perspective, okay?
Here, here.
Okay, so now let's move on to, where are we? Communications, staff communication, I believe.
Council communication.
Council communications, that's what I'm looking for. All right, let's start with Mr. Crummage, Councilman Crummage.
Thank you, Mayor Alves. I think it was a good discussion on the potential housing development. I think these things are tricky because there's a lot of emotions and personal feelings involved, but I look forward to having these things come up, and I think they're exciting and the potential is there. And so I'm looking forward to the next meeting. Other than that, that's all I got. Thanks.
David, would you like to speak?
Yeah, just to bounce off that, I agree. This project is something that I think we could make work. It's gonna require some unique and creative ways to come up with this. I'm on board with the multifamily rate adjustment. That doesn't hurt me at all.
Exactly.
It's the in lieu of fees that's the biggest chunk of money that is my concern.
We're gonna have to.
If we can find a way to meet in the middle with them maybe or something, I don't know. We'll bounce some ideas back and forth, and I think we can make something happen.
I believe that to be true.
So, looking forward to coming
I
up with some
appreciate
solutions.
your diligence and the numbers and everything. You do a great job. Thank you. You as well, Peter. I liked your comments. It's good to have a balance on this council, so we all kind of, it works out better if we all have different opinions, to be honest with you. If we all agree all the time, it sucks. Okay, Councilman Swift.
Did what the two fellow councilmen said. I really do think it's a great project. I think we can all work it out. We gotta find a way for us all to work it out. There are certain things that we can't work out, and but hopefully within that perimeter of everything that we can't work out, hopefully we'll make it happen.
Okay.
And I have nothing else.
Let's have the vice mayor give us his opinion.
I'm excited to hear that there's some movement on the senior housing front. We've been talking about it for a long time, and we got a project before us. We got potential for Heritage to come in and talk to us about a project that they might want to do, and then the other project at the auction yard. So, you know, I think we're moving in the right direction with these projects, and we'll find ways to make sure that we can, if possible, get them done. So, thank you. Thanks for the effort. Thanks for the update.
I like the way you framed your argument. That was typical attorney. Thank you. All right.
I appreciate that.
No problem. It's a compliment. Anyway, my whole situation with this project is this. I love the project. I love the design of the buildings. I did my little quiz with him and see what kind of product we're getting in these buildings, because that's what I do for a living. So I know whether he's joking us around or not. The fact they're not putting fiberglass in there is a step up. He's gonna use Milgard or better windows, that's a step up. He's got tile roofs. I'm sure it's gonna be Monroe, one of those outfits over here in Stockton. They do a good job, fine. He's building a quality product. But my whole problem besides that is, it's not a senior project in my mind, okay? It's bull. It's affordable housing for people who want to live in smaller places. That's really, it's not affordable. It's smaller homes, period. That's the way I view this whole project. Because, first of all, you're never going to be able to control the CC&Rs. And it's not our job, like he mentioned, to do that. But you're going to have a can of worms. Because I can guarantee you, the day will come, that will be a problem. Because it's a problem in everything I've ever seen, in every development I've ever seen. CC&Rs are a joke. All right, and then now, after that, I think if we can find some wiggle room, we're gonna have to do it, but again, we're gonna have to address in lieu of fees, because I don't wanna set that type of precedence. That is murder. We do that, we're gonna have people jumping on us, oh, you did this last time. It's not where we wanna go, so we're gonna have to find some wiggle room, and I don't think that's where we're gonna find it. All right, let's go on. I need support from this council to have the staff draft letters so I can send them to the local airports requesting that they not direct their traffic over our town. I'm referring to the smaller planes and the larger planes. I have been in contact with most of them, with the FAA as well, for the last year and a half, 2 years. I've got over 2,000 or 3,000 complaints. What I'm trying to do for you people that don't understand and don't care is that I'm trying to keep our town as pristine as possible. And I come from experience of 17 years and living in Southern California near an airport called Santa Monica. You don't know now, and you probably won't know until it's too late, what it's like to live under airpath and airplanes and all that. Your lifestyles go out the window. They're obnoxious, they're loud, and they're noisy, and it's not an existence you're gonna like. So far, you've sampled it, but not a lot of it. We were able to move Prime and Allegiant off the town for the most part. Now again, every now and then, Prime pulls a boner like they did today. They came out of Portland, and they came right over the top of town again. That's something we have to address. But I need your guys' consent to work with staff and send some letters out, and not demanding, requesting is what we're doing. And just a point of order to them that, hey, come on, guys, really? Don't do this to us. We have a nice community. We'd like to keep it that way. So if I can get a consensus, we can move forward on that. Do I have a consensus?
You know the worst part? At first, I thought, oh, hasn't that been great lately? I haven't been seeing any planes over town for the longest time. Then this whole thing gets mentioned, and son of a gun. What do I see? Oh,
Prime?
no. Oh, no, they're flying over town. Oh, gosh. I'm not trying to say that. I hate to say that you're right, you know, but in this case, okay, yeah, let's do it.
Okay, if I have a consensus, do I? Okay, thank you. Next thing, do we have that letter for Mr. Mize? No?
We received a letter, but we told him we would put it on the next council.
Next agenda?
meeting.
Okay, very
Yeah.
good. We'll move beyond that. I've talked with staff about creating a citizens award on a monthly basis, and because we're starting a little bit later, I'm gonna wanna do retros, starting with the January one. And the idea is to award a citizen in this community that's been nominated for an effort of making our community better. I'd like to do 12 a year. I'd like to think about maybe a dinner at the end of the year with those 12 people. And maybe I'll work with the Lions Club in creating that environment. I think it adds a lot to our community. It creates a better bond. And I think we'll get a lot more compliance with what we want to do in this community with that kind of effort. So just a point of interest for you guys. It's not, you know, I can't do it without you.
I think it's a good idea.
Okay, and Tammy seems to understand, we have the medals already, and she's willing to work with us on that. So as far as the letter's concerned, I want to work with Mark on that.
In
And
regards to the FAA, or to the airports?
to the airports and also the FAA, correct. Because we don't want to ruffle any feathers, but we do want people to know that we know we don't want what's going on. And that, I'll tell you what that does is it puts it out there, so in the future, if there's an issue, we've already put the warning out. Because if you don't do it, what happens is they take over. Like I said, none of you people have lived in Southern California, thank God. But if you live near the LAX and look at Hawthorne, Inglewood, Lawndale, or Playa del Rey, you would understand what I'm trying to explain to you now. I'm trying to save you from the worst nightmare of your lives. And if you don't believe me, go look at those 4 places in Southern California. Okay, what else was there? I think that pretty much concludes it. Tammy, did you have anything you want to add?
No, we are gonna advertise the Citizen of the Month nominations in our next bill, which goes out on March 1st in the newsletter. And we're gonna ask them to submit it via email, or they can drop it in our Dropbox here. We're gonna take those nominations until the end of March, then we'll sort through them and
I would recommend the council also nominate people. You guys are out there, you see people doing good things. Bring in a couple of them, and then we'll sort through them.
So with those that we receive for that month, then we'll pick out the 12 that we'll recognize.
That's right, and the next will
do
go for the
those.
following year, carry over.
Okay.
Very good. I think it's gonna make an impact on the community to be recognized. I think it's a good thing. Just recently, there was, I've got a letter from this apprentice school they have for trades. And we were asked to send what was it?
It was a certificate of recognition for a local resident completing his apprentice program in plumbing.
And I think that's a good thing too. We want to encourage it. In fact, I'm saddened that the high schools don't have more classes like that. Because not everybody's gonna go to college to be a doctor or a lawyer. And there's a lot of people that are gonna work in the trades, and by the way, make just as much money as those 2 guys I just mentioned.
That is one of the best parts of the job, is writing letters of recommendation or recognizing people. You know, so I really think we need to do more of that.
All right.
Mayor, I had one other thing.
Sure, go right
Sorry,
ahead.
I just remembered, we didn't do like a COVID update for Escalon and San Joaquin. Where are we at with that? Maybe just so I
So,
could know.
yeah, we're still in the purple tier. I haven't heard, last week on our call, our numbers are quite high to be able to move to red tier.
And this is the infections per 100?
Yeah, so now, so when we were in the regional stay-at-home order, it was based on ICU capacity. So when the governor lifted all the regional, now we go back to the positivity rates.
Okay.
Or the positivity testing, and then, your infection rate per 100,000 or whatever. So we are, quite a ways away from red tier on those. Maybe in a couple of weeks. I have been seeing that hospitalization is falling, so that's a good sign. But there's still, OES is still pushing to get people to test because the testing identifies whether it's spreading or not.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, if there's no other business, gentlemen, are you ready to go home?
Sure.
Nothing else? We're done? Chief, anything? You're good?
I'm good.
Thank you. Meeting adjourned.
Hey, Tammy.
Yes, just a minute. Let's see, wait a minute.
What are you gonna do about it?
Good job.
This conference is no longer being recorded.